what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Foot Candle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Foot Candle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello and welcome to Foot Candle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson. With me, Chris Fry. We are with the Foot Candle Film Society and the annual Foot Candle Film Festival. Chris, how's it going? Happy Halloween. It's the Hallows Eve, right?
Sure.
It's Hallows Eve is supposed to be like the eve before. This is the eve before Hallows Eve.
Right. Sure. And I know All Saints Day is November 1st. That I do know.
And that's what the Hallows Eve refers to, is the eve before All Saints Day. Maybe something like that. It's October 30th. That's what I basically am trying to say in a
right.
not so clever way. So you doing okay?
I'm doing well. Yeah, fresh off the screening of our film that we're going to be reviewing today. So it's nice.
Oh yeah, you just saw this last night.
Yes. So thoughts are fresh, which is nice.
Mine have percolated longer. I did see it on Sunday, opening weekend, and saw it with a very interesting crowd. Well, maybe we'll talk about that in the review a little bit. The film we're alluding to right now is the film Conclave. That is by director Edward Berger, starring Mr. Ray Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, and John Lithgow. We're going to be reviewing that film Conclave here in just a few moments, followed by, we try to do news and trailers whenever we get together and record, Chris. Mm-hmm. And normally I'm pretty excited to share the news I've got, or if there's a trailer I'm really excited about. I don't really have a lot this week. It's kind of weak.
Well, you're going to be excited about the recommendation I'm going to do.
Good. I'll look forward to your recommendation at the end of the episode. But just to know, some weak sauce coming out the news section here in the middle of the show. But we'll see. Maybe
we'll bring it back up with the recommendation then.
As Chris is saying, yes, at the end of the show, he will have a recommendation for us of a film that he recently caught back up with and wants to share or have everybody check out if they are looking for something to watch in the coming days or weeks. So, Chris, I say let's jump right into our review, because I am kind of curious to see some thoughts on this film. This is the film Conclave. Let's go ahead and talk about it right now.
The Pope is dead. The throne is vacant.
The conclave begins now. We're about to choose the most famous man in the world.
And 1.25 billion souls watching.
Let's say this is a pretty fair vision of hell. Well, don't be blasphemous, Ray. Hell arrives tomorrow when we bring in the cardinals.
No sane man would want the papacy.
Some of our colleagues seem to want it.
The new film by director Edward Berger, which he previously did All Quiet on the Western Front, well-received, Oscar-winning film. This one is Conclave. It tells the story of Cardinal Lawrence, who is played by Ray Fiennes. He's tasked with leading one of the world's most secretive and ancient events, selecting a new pope. He finds himself at the center of a conspiracy that could shake the very foundation of the Catholic Church. This film is rated PG. It is 2 hours. So you take something that's PG, but yet is a thriller set in the Vatican where people are just walking and talking. Interested to see what your response was to Edward Berger's Conclave, starring Mr. Ray Fiennes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I like this film.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like a little bit of a hesitant
Well, a little bit. I'll tell you, this film does several things right. And for those reasons, I liked the film.
Okay.
There are some things this film did wrong that I'm slightly disappointed in.
Oh.
But not enough to take me off of the positive side of this film.
Got you. See, this is going to be a good review because I've just seen it and my thoughts are very just kind of gut reaction, whereas you've had time to think and kind of mull it over.
I've percolated a little.
Yeah, this is going to be good. So continue.
Okay, so I'm a fan of any film that explores a world, a culture, traditions, the nuances of how something works that I'm not overly familiar with.
Okay.
In this film, as you gave in the little summary, it is talking about the selecting a new pope, which in itself doesn't sound like it would be the most dramatic or most interesting thing in the world. But to Conclave's credit, it does make it very interesting. And even, dare say, a bit of a thriller to it, which I would not have expected with the selection of a pope process. But they did. And for that, I give them credit, because I do think they were able to take hey, we're just going to be voting the whole movie. It's just going to be people sitting down and voting.
Right.
But we made it interesting. It's interesting on several fronts. Interesting in that they do a really great job of showing you how this process works. I do feel like I'm a lot more aware of how this would all work and curious about it, and kind of want to actually learn a little bit more about it based on this film. And I do think they actually made it generally as thrilling as you can make a people sitting down and scribbling names on a sheet of paper and dropping them in a bucket film. It worked. They made it interesting and thrilling by the end.
Okay.
They cast the right people.
Oh, okay.
I think that was a positive of the film. I think Ray Fiennes is really good. I really liked his role in this. Actually, everybody I thought was great. Gave them very distinct personalities that you can really start to understand these characters, because this is just a talking film. It is people in hallways. It is people in large rooms and in small rooms just talking. And that's really what this film does. But you get a sense within the first quarter of the film, you start to know who these different characters are. And I think it's all due to the writing and the actors that kind of help them give a character name to them.
I think it helps, like you kind of mentioned at the top of the show, this is based on a book. And I feel like, I feel like that, I mean, not that, you still got to make a good script out of it, but I think that helps because obviously I would assume the book's pretty strong. So there's a lot of good factors going into the film. Okay.
I will want to talk about the ending.
Okay.
Because I think the film maybe made a choice and presented it in a way that it just didn't work for me. But anyway, we can get to that. I don't want to spoil it because they are marketing this film as having a quote twist, whatever.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, that's where I feel like it stumbles. I think it's trying to be a film that it didn't warrant being up to that point yet. Didn't need to be at that point, but anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay. That's a very more specific criticism. I want to turn it over to you because I'm positive on this film. I did enjoy it. I had a good time with it. I do think it's really interesting. I think it's well acted, well shot, well made, really good. I just think they make some decisions in the storytelling late in the film that I did not agree with. But Chris, tell me your thoughts on Conclave.
So sounds like we're on the same page with the acting. I thought, just well cast across the board. I appreciated the cinematography too of the film. Just the look of it and making, as much as you could, people walking across a courtyard or old decrepit buildings sometimes, because they show like these older buildings, which I don't know if they're really in Rome or not, but they look like they could be in the Vatican. Doing a good job of making things as visually interesting as possible. You mentioned based on a book, but if this had been a play, which I could see how it could be.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Making the use of the cinematic language. Yes, this does. I mean, even in the trailer, you see shots of like people, popes or cardinals. They're not popes.
They're
cardinals.
Not popes.
Wanting to be
that would
pope,
be too many popes.
Too many popes.
And we don't need. We just need one.
But coming across a courtyard, and you see all the little umbrellas. And just lots of little visual touches that kind of keep you visually interested. So I thought that was good. The acting, you already talked about. Yeah, it's really good. I couldn't help, which I wonder, I assume this crossed your mind. You mentioned here we are, October 30th, about a week away from a different type of election for the United States of America.
Yeah.
This film, and who knows? I mean, I don't, the way productions go, they, do things, and then when they release things, this film just came out October 25th. Don't know if, it was at festivals before that, but don't know if the release time was just in host for Oscars or, award season, or whether it was trying to make a point, which my wife and I were talking about it afterwards. She's like, yeah, I liked the film, but it was distracting because it was of the political nature. I'm like, oh, you're talking about it's the church. I mean, they were positive, but just thinking it's about religion. She's like, but I'm like, no, you're right. There's
campaigns. It's
and people, doing things to maybe sabotage other people.
Well, look, there was a line in this film. I can't recite the exact verbiage of the line, but I was in a very full theater on a Sunday afternoon. A much older age group than I typically see in a movie theater, which is great. I'm happy if a film can get out the different age groups like this. The biggest laugh in the audience
has to do with the curtsy.
No, that was that guy laughed too. But I'm saying like from a line of dialogue that kind of surprised me. It was a dialogue where one of the people, because again, this whole situation is people are trying to decide who they're going to vote for to be the next pope, and there's some internal campaigning going on. There are some people like no. Basically, it's down to like 3 people, and it's like, well, I've got to vote for the least of these 2 just to make sure the other person doesn't get it, and that erupted some laughs and kind of a out in the audience with people. So again, I knew they were correlating it to our national election too. So I wouldn't be surprised if the timing was a little intentional with the release on this, maybe a bit. Yeah.
So I won't give away why it was fine, but I mentioned because I want to call Isabella Rossellini plays Sister Agnes, and she's not in the film a lot, but when she is on the screen, she makes her presence known. I thought she was awesome, and she does a curtsy, which that got a laugh from our audience. I mean, it's not that it's funny, but it's just kind of like a really good moment.
Very nice moment, yeah.
But I will say I liked the film. It is. I thought it was kind of long, and it does do repetitive voting, but there was enough there that pulled me along that I did like it. Also, unfortunately for me, and I'll put this down to Chris sees too many movies, which is why he guesses certain things. And I don't know, because I haven't seen the script, if it's highlighted, this is twist 1, this is twist 2, this is twist 3. The different things that were happening, like the politics, none of that really shocked me or anything like that, which is fine, but it kept me interested. I will say, this isn't a spoiler. This whole thing's about an election, okay? Conclave, essentially. The person who gets elected pope at the end of the film, that does happen. They do elect one. The white smoke goes up, which I actually remember from a Dan Brown novel. Whenever it's black smoke, that means, hey, we didn't do it. White smoke means, hooray, success. Which they actually never come out and say. That was an interesting thing about the film. Let me finish like all these different points. But that was something else in a way I liked, but in a way I would have liked a little bit more information. They kind of, in a way, they expect you to know certain things. But I guess you kind of get it. They always talk about how nothing happened. You see the black smoke, and then when something finally does happen, you see the white smoke. But if you don't come in, they didn't do, I guess they trust the audience to be, which is nice, intelligent enough that we're not going to tell you some of the eccentricities about this process.
We're just going
to kind of show you stuff and let you kind of figure it out.
We just see them tearing up the ballots, putting them in the little furnace. They put the little can in there that I guess has the color or the kind of smoke effect. Put it in the little furnace, and then you see an outside shot, and you see some smoke billowing, and you either hear people clapping outside because they're all happy, or you don't. So it doesn't spell it all out for you. It does require the audience to have a little basic knowledge of the process. But I felt like it did okay by that. I mean, I think you could have figured it out if you were paying attention to what was happening.
And I was kind of surprised that I guess a lesser film may have spelled some more of those things out, but they didn't. So before I finish basically the person who, to finish the first point I was trying to make, the person who gets elected pope wasn't a surprise to me.
Correct.
And I was a little disappointed in that because of the way this person comes into the story. You're kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of I know where this is.
It's a little obvious.
I know where this is going. Yeah. And it goes there. However, there was a revelation that you were kind of at the end of the film about some things that have happened that you were kind of feel like, and I can see why you think that, and it took me by surprise. But this is a work of fiction. Yeah. This is based on I guess how popes are really elected. I assume I'm not Catholic, but I assume we've already talked about how we know the smoke is right. So it's a work of fiction. And there's some thing that happened toward the end of the film that I think was the twist that most people are referring to.
It is.
And I understand how people would be like, oh, come on. But for me, it worked because it's like, well, that is something interesting. And if you take the through line, one of the problems that's in the film, which is why you have there's Tremblay, who's played by John Lithgow, who has one perspective on the papacy or what he wants as the papacy. Then you have Adeyemi.
Yeah, Ayami.
Okay, so he's another person vying. And then you have Tedesco, who's like the Machiavellian kind of guy who basically nobody really wants him to get it because he's kind of like power seeking, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then you have a couple of others that are vying for the position.
Yeah, Stanley Tucci, Bellini is another one that's in kind of, there are like 4 or 5 contenders, throughout most of the film. Yeah.
Right. And one of the things, which is why you have the different factions vying, is there's a perception of how the Catholic Church has gone over the past 30 or 40 years. They've, making progression. And they mention things like come to terms with how the Catholic Church acted in World War II, come to terms with the scandals about the sexual abuse. And they mention these things about certain, and trying to stretch towards diversity and different, they mention these different things. And so, but then Tedesco specifically, who I think is Italian, or comes across, he's Italian because he says this much.
Sure.
Kind of talks about how wanting to kind of return to traditional things, which I guess is how it kind of echoes the election here in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Well, that and the England with the Brexit movement.
Sure.
It's a lot of that same idea of like having
on.
kind of a faction of people that just want to kind of return back to more, quote, traditional standards for the organization.
So all that being said, if none of that had been, and I felt like it was done as lightly as you can, that kind of stuff, especially you just, I think we're kind of hypersensitive to it because of the time we're living in. But all that said, if that hadn't been handled, I felt like as well as it was, then the thing at the end that happens, I'm like, okay, and it is a stretch, but this is a fiction film. So it worked for me because of that. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And that's a leap that I would have never, ever, 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 ever seen coming.
No, I don't have an issue with the uniqueness of the reveal that we get. And sure enough, I mean,
you feel like it was rushed, maybe?
It feels a little rushed, and I don't feel like they really tied it in with what it really meant, like what it really meant for the rest of the film. I didn't feel like, because it's going the whole way of the film seems to be adopting kind of this idea of the notion of power and who should possess power and what method should we be using for choosing people that have power? That's to me kind of, I think the whole concept of the whole traditional values and how the church is moving forward, it's touched on, it's talked about, but it doesn't seem to be a real driving factor of how people are actually making these decisions. It really is based on power. It's all about who really, because even there's conversation about the votes all going towards a certain other person. That's not one of the ones we mentioned. That I thought was a little surprising that this person was now being actually a consideration. And I thought that was an interesting little kind of, I didn't know where the film was going to go because it's different than what I expected. It was good. It's just, I feel like the way the film presented that ending, it had something it wanted to say with that ending, but I don't feel like it really had any, it felt like it just kind of came out of left field. And it stayed in left field, for the film. Okay. It's almost like, okay, we're being hit with this revelation. I was fine with the uniqueness of that revelation. I think some people are like, oh, I that's so out of left field, whatever. I'm like, I'm fine with it being out of left field.
Got you.
Just once you bring it out of left field, bring it to center plate, bring it to the rest of the field and kind of let it interact with the rest of the film in a way. So I understand kind of the why. Why was it important for you as a writer to bring that element in, to bring this revelation in? And I just didn't feel like it kind of landed. I'm using my baseball. I stayed up last night watching the baseball game. So I've got a lot of baseball references to make in the film here. Sorry about that. That was my only take on it. And so it's just like when the revelation came out, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Now tell me why in the scope of this film it matters.
See,
And I didn't see the connection. That was just me. I didn't see the connection. I didn't see the impact of why this needed to be part of this story. Anyway, that was my only take on it. I just felt like it was a interesting revelation. Maybe the book wove it in to a deeper level to kind of make it more of a symbolic nature commentary on everything we've been seeing for the past 2 hours. But I didn't see Again, it came out of left field, and I just felt like it stayed in left field, and I didn't understand its purpose in the rest of the film as a whole. So
that's it. Yeah. Okay. I guess it surprised me, but overall it worked better for me, and I'm not sure. I think because I felt like it wove in some of the themes that had been touched on earlier.
Yeah, and I felt like those themes were touched on, but I never felt like the themes really became the film. That particular theme, and I know we're dancing all around
stuff. Yeah,
I never felt like that particular theme and topic of conversation ever became any kind of real driving factor in the rest of the film. Everything still just boiled down to who do we want to have in power? Who do we want to have running this thing? Who's willing to do? Who's clean? Who doesn't have a back reputation?
Skeleton in the closet.
Because so much of the film is about, okay, we think we got somebody, and now we need to make sure that we're not missing something. And now we're finding out something's being missed, or there's something coming out. And again, I loved it. I think it was great. It's just, and then when you bring in this twist that does have a lot of social commentary and a lot of commentary on the church itself, I'm like, yeah, I buy it. I'm all for it. I just don't see how it relates to the rest of the film. I felt like it was just a little carved out little bit. And again, my hopes are in the book that there's more of a tie-in with the themes, deeper themes. Anyway, that's it.
I say so.
I was fine with the ending. I just felt like it was a bit of a missed opportunity, and I didn't quite understand the symbolic nature of it that they were wanting to weave in with the bigger film as a whole.
I felt, overall, I liked the film. I do feel, for a walking and talking movie, they did keep me engaged, but I feel like it could have been a little tighter.
Sure.
Which I'm always going to say anytime a movie is like 2 hours, I'm like, okay, trim it down a little bit maybe. I'll say the one part I didn't buy, and they actually show this in the trailer.
Oh.
And it just, there again, you're talking about the ending, and you're kind of like, if it was better handled in the book, I'd probably buy it a little more. I'm imagining this is kind of better handled in the book. But they show this in the trailer, so I'm not ruining anything. Ray Fiennes, as the Lawrence character, he decides, which I thought was kind of shocking, and there are no repercussions for him doing this. Apparently, whenever a pope dies, they seal off his room. Yeah. He decides to go in there and he breaks the seal, which they have a little wax seal, so you can basically tell that nobody's been in this room. He decides to go in there, and then there are basically no repercussions of that, which I was kind of surprised about. So that bothered me a little bit. But then he makes a discovery while he's in there. Yeah. And I thought that was a little it was a little... Because everything else in this film seems to be very realistic based. It just seems...
I agree with you on that.
Almost like a documentary. And then he makes this discovery and finds something. You're like, really? Wow. That's how he found it?
Well, A, how he found it. B, the fact that it was even there to begin with is like, what? Why would somebody have done that? I don't understand. Yeah, I'm with you completely on that. That did pull me out of the film a bit there and reminded me. Honestly, at that point, I was getting so deep into the
technical aspects, right?
When I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's right. We're watching, quote, a thriller. It's it's still here to entertain us primarily. So it's got to make it convenient to get to this piece of information. And I didn't buy it, but it did kind of remind me what kind of film we're technically trying to watch really at the end of the day. So I agree with you though.
Okay.
No, but I think, it was unique enough. It was interesting enough. I think it's an interesting watch. It's a beautiful watch to watch. I'm shot extremely well, acted extremely well. Great ensemble cast to work with. Yeah, I felt like it fumbled the ending to some degree, but not enough to me to say that I didn't enjoy this film. I just would have liked to have seen that ending handled a little more constructively, a little differently, but.
So let me ask you about something. We're wrapping up, but I'm curious. This is the second film in a row. I mean, piece by piece last week, we talked about how Lego movie, but not really a Lego movie. It's more of a documentary and like finding an audience for that film.
Yeah.
What do you think about the audience? Would you just imagine? I haven't read a lot of articles about this. I saw it in a theater of 6 people, and we mentioned it's PG.
Yeah.
There's no like action sequences or like obviously there's no sex scenes and like there's no drinking. And,
Yeah.
So
that would have been shocking.
right.
Yeah.
So do you think I feel like this is kind of I'm happy a film like this got made because it's PG and I feel like it's a hard sell.
Oh yeah.
You said you did see it with a theater full of people.
It was a theater full of people, and I think that may have been the one full theater showing of this film. I mean, seriously, I think it's
in the
just,
Hickory area. Sure.
It's it's a double-edged sword, Chris. I'm always so happy when a film like this does go to a theater and I can watch it in a theater experience because I'd much rather prefer to do that.
Oh, sure.
But I also wonder why. Like, because I don't think the audience is there for this film, just like I don't think it was there for Piece by Piece last week. Conclave is a walking, talking, people voting on pieces of paper, learning about the Catholic Church and the selection of the. It's not screaming blockbuster.
I guess
And
they
the
thought
fact
it was
that
a
it is-
thriller enough, maybe.
I think it was just enough. I think we're tapping into the Da Vinci Code audience from years ago because I had a lot of criticisms about that film, that adaptation of a quote thriller novel that had a lot more history and process and adult knowledge sharing tone to it. I did not like that film at all. I thought,
You're really going to hate my recommendation. Sure, I'm kidding. That is not the
Da Vinci
recommendation
Code.
I'm going to
I
make.
really hated that film because that film did not do what this film was able to pull off and actually make the exploration interesting. And plus, you had great acting. Not to say Tom Hanks.
Yeah, come on.
He was kind of sleepwalking through that film also. Anyway, what was I saying? Shoot. I think this is kind of tapped in that audience where people either like hearing about a film that's adapted from a book that maybe was a slightly popular book. It's probably gotten some airtime on some higher minded television or radio
Some
show.
NPR podcast or
NPR,
something.
some
Sure.
morning talk show, CBS This Morning, Sunday Morning, some show I'm sure has probably done a feature on it. And that is bringing out a group of people that only go to the theaters when they're being presented with, hey, here's a film that's interesting and it's based on this famous book and it's got these actors and
A lot
all
of,
that.
Lithgow, Tucci.
Yeah, you're not going to be
Fiennes, it's like-
bombarded with profanity left and right because it's rated PG.
that's
I think
true.
there's all that. It's like, ooh, this is the kind of people. It's like, yep, Sunday after lunch, after church. Yep, this sounds like the kind of movie we want to go see. So I think there's a niche audience for it. Is it enough to put this anywhere near the top of the box office? No, not anywhere at all. But if the theater can figure out how to cater to those niche audiences and still make money from their movies, then
Okay,
Great.
now last thing I'll do too is, Alan, you are gazing into the crystal ball, which since you are dressed up as a fortune teller for Halloween,
I
sitting
am.
across from me, you happen to have one sitting in front
I
of you.
dress up like a fortune teller
Every
most
day.
days. It just happens to now kind of work for this week. Yeah.
It's gaze into that crystal ball
Yeah.
and tell me whether or not you think this is going to be noticed at the Oscars at all. You've
I do
got
believe it
several
will.
actors. This seems like it might be somewhat of a
I do believe it will.
prestige thing because in a way it's like, here's this story. And, it's like,
Well, and the main reason I feel like it is, Chris, is that we don't really have a lot of big front runners in the Oscar awards category at the moment.
okay.
We really don't. I mean,
Okay.
like real quick, top of mind. What's a shoe in for Oscar buzz right now?
Just, we're talking acting or picture?
Any.
I mean, challengers.
Yeah, but I agree. But that was also like an early in the year
Sure.
release.
Oh, yeah. It was really,
Yeah.
it was really early.
But I mean,
Challengers, Civil War, although that was divisive, that doesn't mean it can't do it.
Yeah.
And then Here, which is about to come out, which we might review next week.
I'm hearing that's no good.
Really?
Wait. We'll talk about it. Yeah, we need to. We're
Interesting.
going to review it
Okay.
because I do want to see it. But I'm just telling you.
Your crystal
early-
ball is telling
The
you
early
it's no
reviews.
good? Or you've
Yeah,
actually
my
heard of
crystal ball is saying no, that's not going to work.
Okay, interesting.
We'll see.
All right, all right.
Overall, what I'm trying to say is there's not a lot of front runners.
Okay.
So you take a movie like Conclave. It's got Ray Fiennes, who I think is Oscar nomination worthy in this film.
Okay.
It's got a cat. Is this the year where we have the ensemble cast award, or is that still a ways off?
I can't remember whether they're doing
Or like a casting
they're doing
award.
a casting award,
Okay.
and they're
See?
gonna do stunts like 2
another
years from
year
now.
or so.
Yeah. Okay, but I
But
think
if
you're
this
right.
is the year with the casting, I
Uh,
could see that for a nomination for this one too.
Okay.
Because that's kind of like almost like saying the ensemble. It's like
Oh,
a
yeah,
little bit
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
recognizing the whole array of the cast.
I mean, it gives the award to the casting director, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like I got you.
It is
Yeah.
it is an indication of what we thought about
This was
the
a good
ensemble.
ensemble.
Of this
Yeah,
cast,
sure. Actually,
So yeah, I could see that. I think maybe cinematography, maybe, probably not. I probably wouldn't see it for direction quite enough because it's just not really a flashy directorial effort.
right.
Writing, I could see writing. I could see
So
adapted
adapted,
screenplay.
sure.
I could see adapted screenplay for this. So yeah, I do think this is going to get some buzz because it does kind of fit those categories. It is a higher-minded film that's got some artistic talent behind it, with some well-known actors. That's covering a very lesser-known or lesser explored subject matter, and it's blending it with a thriller, but also historical perspective. It's a perfect Oscars pick. Maybe a little too thriller-ishy for a sweep at the Oscars for being like Best Picture or anything.
Got you.
But I think
But
this will be
because
in
of
those
some
talks.
of the whether we're going ahead and saying it's intentional, some of the reflections of like political type
Yeah,
stuff, it'll probably be nominated for picture because of that, because it's
Could
like
be.
some of the themes
Right
and
now,
things.
as it stands, I mean, I can only think of 4 or 5 films that I even think are in the competition to be Best Picture nominees. So yeah, this one I think has got a chance in there. So
Okay.
I'd be surprised if it didn't at this point, unless there's a couple films coming out in the next 2 months. I'm just not really, nobody's aware of, that just kind of come out of nowhere and start to get all this acclaim.
We haven't mentioned, which I think will definitely be a contender for Best Picture, Craven the Hunter.
Craven-
So I think that's probably, I don't think you probably forgot about that one, but with Aaron Taylor Johnson, he'll probably get a Best Actor nod as well.
You know what? Look, I'm not going to joke about Craven the Hunter yet.
Come on.
I will happily joke about it if I go see it and it's horrible.
Okay. Fair enough.
I give every film a fair shake.
Which we should.
Except for Venom 3. I will not go see Venom 3. I'm sorry.
The Last Dance.
I saw the first Venom. I hated it.
Okay.
I did not see the second one. And out of a sign of solidarity, I will not go see the third one either. So, sorry. If Venom 3 is like,
The most amazing movie.
if it is the most amazing movie and it sweeps the Oscars, I'm going to feel like the fool, and so be it. I will still stand by my guns on this, and I'm not going to see it.
Fair enough.
But you're right. Yeah. There's just not a lot out there on the Oscar side yet, I don't think. So we will see what happens with
So
this.
signs point to yes.
I believe so.
Oscar
I believe
buzz.
Conclave will get some attention at the Academy Awards this
Okay.
year.
Fair enough.
Book it. Write it down somewhere. I'm going to go on that.
Okay.
Well, that is the film Conclave. It sounds like, but Chris and I were both positive on it. I had a little more misgivings on it, on some areas of it than Chris did, but overall, we're still positive. No, I'm saying, look, it's worth a watch. It's a good film and interesting film. And yeah, I look forward to maybe seeing it again sometime in the future. Maybe the ending will hit me differently, kind of if I go in with a different mindset perspective from the first minute. So,
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, that is Conclave. Don't know how much longer it'll be playing in theaters. I think it's doing okay for a specialty niche film. I think it's doing okay. So
Okay.
we'll see how long it sticks around. And right now there's not a lot else in the theater, so it might be, theaters might be looking to plug in a screen or two with something like this if they can.
Sure.
All right. Chris, we're going to take a break. When we come back, fine, I've got some news we'll talk about, I guess. We'll
Okay.
spend as little time on that as possible.
Ouch.
Just so we can get to your recommendations and talk about that.
So we're going to be, the news must be talking about Craven the Hunter then.
Well, you kind of spoiled it now. There was a new trailer for Craven the Hunter. I've seen it like twice now at the movie theater. Didn't really change my... Look, I'm giving it a fair shake.
Okay.
Look, I like Aaron Taylor Johnson. I am a Spider-Man fanboy. Craven the Hunter, I do like him as a classic villain.
Okay.
I'm like, all right, bring it on. Let's see what happens. But nothing I've seen has given me any encouragement. But we'll see. Okay, go on to our news next. Stay tuned. You're listening to Foot Candle Films. We'll be right back in just a minute.
This podcast is sponsored by Jackson Creative, a custom communication agency located in downtown Hickory, North Carolina, specializing in online content creation. To learn more, visit thejacksoncreative.com. Jackson Creative, we tell your story.
Welcome back to Foot Candle Films here on the Mesh.tv. We had our podcast network, Mesh.tv. We had our review of Conclave in the first half of the show. Both of us coming out positive on the film. Even during our little break here, I know the break seemed really short to all of you in podcast land. Believe me, it was a much longer break here in the actual studio. We had this long, in-depth discussion. We spoiled every element of the film. We talked about it. And we've come to an even better understanding of each other's opinion on the film.
We apologize to our editor for having to cut that out.
Yeah, sorry about that. So anyway, we're back after that very short, brief break that you heard. And we've moved on to our news and trailer section of our show. As I mentioned, not a lot going on right now. I try to stay on top of this every week, Chris, and I always bookmark any interesting film announcement articles I come across or any interesting trailers that sound like something we'd want to check out. And I've got nothing this week. But what I will do is push out just a couple that, if nothing else, we can at least explore, and I want to get your opinions on, for better or for worse. So let's do this first. Let's do the trailer. Where to go with this? Okay. The Russo brothers.
Yes.
They of Marvel fame. Mm-hmm. They did, this is Anthony and Joe Russo. They did the Captain America Winter Soldier movie. They did the Captain America Civil War movie. Then they did the two Avengers movies, the Infinity War and Endgame. Obviously made some of the biggest blockbusters of all time with those movies.
They could probably retire and never do anything else.
Probably so. Now I think I announced months ago when Marvel made some announcements about upcoming films that they were bringing the Russo brothers back. The Russo brothers will be doing the next two Avengers movies, which will be coming out in 50 years. I don't know when it is. It's in the future.
Well, considering how, Marvel has kind of had, dropped off after Infinity War, it doesn't surprise me that they're trying to let's try to get some mojo back by having Robert Downey Jr. come back, have the Russo brothers come back. I can see that. Yeah.
So that's where we are with them, with future projects. But in the meantime, they actually made a movie.
Okay.
That is going straight to Netflix. Okay. Or a Netflix movie.
Did they do The Gray Man?
I think they did.
Okay.
Which I did not like.
No. We reviewed it on the show,
review it.
I think.
Not a fan.
Yeah, not a huge fan of that one either.
So that's why I'm a little curious about this one as well. So This is a film. I've not seen the trailer for this. Actually, I'm just now reading even the byline of the film for the very first time. The only reason I brought it to our attention is because A, it is the Russo brothers directing it.
Sure.
B, it stars a Mr. Chris Pratt and a Miss Millie Bobby Brown.
Interesting.
The main reason I'm bringing it up is it does also have Stanley Tucci in it, who we just talked about in Conclave. So that's my connection to our review.
Is it coming out soon?
March.
Okay. Wow.
I mean, soonish.
Ish. Yeah.
It also has Keywan,
the guy from
Short Round.
Yeah.
I hate
the Oscar when he got nominated for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Everybody was all good on how to say his name because we were hearing it so much. And now we forgot.
We forgot because it's been a couple of years.
It's
or a year and a half.
Bit. Yeah.
Anyway, he's in the film also.
Got you. Well, cool.
So let's do this. Let's watch the trailer for the film, and the film's name is The Electric State. The byline is
not a fan of the title.
There you go. The byline is, quote, an orphan teenager traverses the American West with a sweet but mysterious robot and an eccentric drifter in search of her younger brother.
Okay. If this is a kid's movie,
it is not a kid's movie.
Okay. I mean, if it was Netflix, but it's PG, it's action or whatever. And then I'm okay, but otherwise, that sounds. Well, the premise sounds a little iffy.
Let's just watch the trailer, and then we can make our determination of how we feel about The Electric State. This is a Netflix movie directed by Joe and Anthony Russo. Let's take a look and see what we got.
I am curious.
You sure you want to do this?
Right now, all of us have something in common. We all lost something after the rebellion. Robots lost their freedom.
All right, so that's the trailer for The Electric State. Chris?
I don't remember the name of the band who did the song Electric Avenue, but that is all I can think about hearing the title of that movie.
You know what's really funny, too? You mentioned that. This is totally aside.
They used an Oasis song in the trailer. They did not use Electric Avenue.
No, but Electric Avenue was Eddie Grant.
Oh, yes. I think it
Grant.
was.
Funny
Wow.
about that. Going back to our review of Conclave, every time I hear the word Conclave, I sing to myself the White Stripes doing Conquest, but
nice.
Putting in the word Conclave
Nice.
the whole time.
They missed out on an opportunity.
They did.
on the trailer.
That could have been a great cross promotion.
That would have been amazing.
All right.
Wow.
Anyway, The Electric State. Chris?
So, okay. Yeah, I was ragging on the title. That sounds like a terrible. I feel like it is a little bit of a kid's movie. It's PG-13.
I mean,
and it's like going to
yes.
get your brother. And I don't understand if Chris Pratt is the dad of Millie Bobby Brown, why he's like,
No.
okay, I'll help you go get your brother.
He's
like,
a drifter.
He's a drifter. So it has
the
nothing.
tagline
'cause
said,
she lost her whole family. Okay,
tagline says he's a drifter.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Because otherwise it's like, Dad, you're not a little bit more involved in wanting to find your son. Okay, I got to say, I don't think it looks good, but I admire the weirdness and the oddness and the big swing they're taking. Just the mere fact, like, humans lost their connection. Okay, whatever. But a line in the trailer says, robots lost their freedom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Well, followed by shots. If you
I'm like, all right, let's see what you
watch
do with
the
that.
trailer, because again, this is an audio podcast. I know you're just
Sure.
listening. Yeah, there are like scenes of like a robots walking down a, marching down a street. All types. It was some interesting choices made with that.
So it looks ambitious. So I don't know.
You know me and giant robots.
Oh, what is the one that I still haven't seen that had Hugh Jackman and it was like
Real Steel. Man, you got to see Real Steel.
Real Steel. Yes,
Real Steel's
that's it.
great.
I remember you being a big fan of it.
Yeah,
it is Hugh Jackman, right?
Yeah, Hugh
Okay.
Jackman's in that one.
Okay.
And Evangeline Lilly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Real Steel.
Real Steel. No, I like.
And you like
I
Pacific Rim too.
Yeah,
Okay, maybe not the second one. But the
I never
first
saw
one.
the second one.
Okay.
I was a little disappointed in Pacific Rim, but I still enjoyed it.
Okay.
I just like the big robot movies. And this does have some big robots in it, as well as some small robots. So, I'm curious, but I don't have high hopes. So, just because I don't know, what is Chris Pratt doing these days? It seems like he's just kind of. He's been in a couple of Amazon like action movies that I've never seen.
He has. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah,
he did the Jurassic Park movies.
Right, which I
weren't a fan
don't
of.
care for those either. So
Right.
really, the only thing I've seen Chris Pratt do that I've enjoyed has been Peter Quill in or Star-Lord in the
Sure.
Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
Sure.
But I give that more to James Gunn and the writing than I do to Chris Pratt specifically. So we'll see. I don't know. It's on Netflix. It'll be easy to watch.
There you go.
We'll see how it turns out. Yeah, it's just unfortunately both Millie Bobby Brown, her being in all the recent Kong Godzilla movies,
Right.
or at least a couple of them. She wasn't in the most recent one, but she was in two of them.
And
then him in some other throwaway action movies that nobody paid attention to. It's not giving me a lot of confidence for what these two are doing.
I feel sorry for Millie Bobby Brown. I like her as an actress. I really like her in Stranger Things. But I feel like, in a way, Stranger Things is like the worst thing that ever happened to her. Because it's like, everybody just thinks because of the way those were shot, like she's so young. And now like they're treating her like she's a young girl. Like it looks like in this movie, it's like a young-ish-er girl. And I'm like, no, she's like, I don't know. To me, it's like, in theory, she would be like 4 or 5 years younger than it looks like she appears she is in this movie, as opposed to having her be, I don't know. I just like, I don't know. I feel like, and we're never going to see the next or the final season of Stranger Things. When it does, it's like these people are all going to be like 40 years old and have families.
Tough. Yeah.
So I feel like, I don't know. It's weird.
No, I agree with you. I think she's good.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
But yeah, I do think Stranger Things has kind of hampered her a little bit in perception.
She just can't get away. And even in like the Godzilla movies, she's treated as like
played
the
as a
little
young
kid.
kid.
And it's
Yeah.
like, come on. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see.
All right. Last, The Electric State, coming on Netflix on March 14th.
Okay.
By the Russo brothers.
Yes.
This one I'm even less interested in, but I'm still going to
that one was interesting. I mean, interesting to see a movie you hadn't heard anything about. So.
I do love, the original old Zucker brothers comedies, Airplane.
Yes.
The Naked Gun.
Yes.
Actually, I'm going to say Airplane and Airplane 2 and the original Naked Gun.
Okay.
Really good. Really enjoyable. I like the absurd comedy. It's great.
Okay.
The downside of those movies are after they became popular, they spawned a whole bunch of crap ones. Like basically any movie that became popular, for a while there was a spoof movie of that movie or that genre, like done really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I ever saw any of them, Chris. I mean, there were ones done for horror movies.
You didn't see any of the scary movies?
I did not.
Okay.
There were ones based on like the back when 300 was like a big deal. There were like spoof movies done with like the whole Roman Empire, gladiator things. All of those. I never saw any of those other spoof movies. I just feel like they all seem like cheap opportunities. Just say, oh, it's an easy target. Let's pick something famous, and now we're just going to make fun with kind of crass, shallow jokes and just see what we do.
Sure.
That may be me branding a movie I've never seen, but I've never heard anybody saying, Alan, you need to see the original Scary Movie.
Gotcha.
However, that will not change with this news.
Oh.
I still will not plan to see these movies. But
okay.
The Wayans brothers,
yes,
that would be which two Wayans brothers are we talking about? Marlon Wayans, Sean Wayans, and Keenan Ivory Wayans are developing a new Scary Movie reboot.
Huh. How many of them? I mean, there were at least 3.
That's a good question. I don't know. The Wayans brothers are headed back to the world of Scary Movie, reuniting for the first time in 18 years. So they were all involved with the first 2 films of the Scary Movie franchise, but I think it went on to do more than just 2.
They definitely had a 3rd one, but maybe they weren't involved with that. Okay.
They're shooting a new Scary Movie.
Okay.
It's going to be shooting in 2025, so next year. Miramax is behind it and helping release along with Paramount. Trying to see if there's anything of interest.
You know what would be interesting to me? If their Scary Movie reboot actually wasn't as much funny as it was kind of if they were somehow able to do kind of like, which is the movie they were originally making fun of, Scream. They were making fun of Scream when they made Scary Movie. And if they were able to do it, but actually not make fun of it, but somehow have it be a hybrid of all these movies, basically do it of the A24 horror movies. You know, like the new brand of horror. Like,
well, that was going to be my question to you.
It follows
who do they
Midsommar,
make fun of?
Like these new, like...
But how do you do that?
That are more like cerebral horror movies as opposed to somebody running around with a knife killing people. Because that's what they were making fun of. Obviously, you know.
They were making fun. I mean, the Scary Movie came about really after the Scream franchise.
Right. That's what they were doing.
Up,
yeah, sure.
I just don't know how you have fun and make
fun of... How
do
you parody like Midsommar or Hereditary or...
I mean, I guess there's ways to do it, but they're making it sound like that they're doing this because now's the perfect time to be coming back and lampooning horror again. I'm like...
Well, I get that. Because you have... I mean, you have so many horror movies being made now because you can usually make them for cheaper. And that was something that actually, like after the pandemic, it was like just tons of horror movies. So I could, like, you know, the fact that there are 3 Terrifier movies, which I'd never seen any of those, but now I've seen the first 2. I can see how it's like, it's like you don't have to have a lot of stars. You know, A24 has a kind of house style when they make a horror movie, but still,
All right. Maybe you've convinced me there is an opportunity for this. I still don't plan to watch it, but
I'm curious. I'm curious what angle they're going to take.
Yeah.
If they are just making Scary Movie 5, even though it's a reboot, that one. But if they somehow do tweak the kind of formula, I don't know. I'm curious.
Okay. Well, they can't do Scary Movie 5 because they've already done it.
Okay.
There have been 5 Scary Movies. Wow. The first 2 were done by the Wayans family. Then, for the 3rd one, so basically there was a deal made, it sounds like, to where Miramax bought over the franchise.
Okay.
And it was a Weinstein deal that even the Wayans brothers currently say was a bad deal.
Bad deal.
They were mad that Miramax took it over and kind of watered down the franchise.
Gotcha.
But supposedly the third one was actually directed by the Zucker brothers.
Oh.
Based on ideas from the Wayans brothers.
Interesting.
For number 3. And then none of them were involved with fourth or fifth ones. So, so anyway, yeah, that's coming sometime soon. After 20 years, the Wayans brothers are back to give fans what they've been asking for. Have they? Okay. A return to the scary movie franchise.
You said there's not a title for it?
No.
They should call it Scary Movie, the Reboot. That's what they should call it. Because that actually comments on the whole thing that they're doing. Like, yeah, if they could do something like that. Yeah. Scary Movie.
That is what's happening there. So we are in a store. So basically, I guess what this is a commentary on, like you're saying, is that horror films have kind of risen back in pop culture to a status point where now we can make fun of them again.
And any Exorcist movie has to have Russell Crowe in it.
Because that's right. Actually, no, that's the one.
That right there, because he was in like 3 or 4 of it, like all these Exorcist
we had the
movies.
whole news story about how there was 2 almost identical Exorcist-based movies starring Russell Crowe that the marketing looked almost identical between these two, but these two films have nothing in common with one another. And it's just hilarious that they're released within a year or so of each other.
Right.
Anyway, there may be some opportunities to explore this more from a comedic standpoint, but it is kind of the ultimate sign for a genre when you get to the point where there's now the lampooning movies of it. Obviously, you're doing something right in that they feel like there's enough there's enough to work with and to do something comical off of and make a spoof of. So, all right. Well, that's what we've got coming up. That's it, Chris. That's what I have for news. Like I said, wasn't great, but it's what I had for this week. Hopefully next week I can rebound and have some better stuff. Studios, please put something out. Give us something good to talk about.
Doesn't sound like it's going to be here, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, no, just something online. Just give me something to talk about. Give me an interesting film story. Give me an interesting trailer to show. I'm all happy to do it.
Okay.
So instead, what we'll do is we'll kind of roll right into the last section of the show, which is the recommendation from Chris. Chris, you have a recommendation. You teased it earlier in the show. I do not know what this recommendation is, but a film that you want to recommend for our audience to check out. Turn it over to you. What you got for us?
So normally I try to do films that either are newer or that maybe older films but I don't feel like people have seen. This is a film that I'm going to recommend that I think you've probably seen it if you're listening to this podcast, but you need to rewatch it. And if you've never seen it, you definitely need to watch it. It's from 2014. It stars a performance by Mr. Ray Fiennes, which he did not get nominated for an Oscar, which was an absolute travesty. Which actually scares me because like he's so pivotal to this movie, and then you're like, oh, he's pivotal to Conclave. Surely he's going to if the movie gets any nominations, surely he'll be one of them. I'm talking about Wes Anderson's The Grand Budapest Hotel.
Yes.
I liked this movie okay the first time I saw it, but it was a really odd viewing experience, and I didn't love it as much as I should have. And now every subsequent rewatch, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this thing is so good. Ray Fiennes, who plays M. Gustave, the concierge at the Grand Budapest Hotel, and the thing too is at the time when he did this, I don't think I'd ever really seen him do comedy.
Yeah, that was kind of actually, I think when he got cast in this, it was a little bit of a surprise. Like,
right.
Can Ray Fiennes do this kind of absurdist comedy and
he still has a lot of dramatic notes in it, but he just he knocks this out of the park. Absolutely. It is, you have, what's his name? Jeff Bridges doing The Big Lebowski. You're like, I can't see anybody else doing that. Ray Fiennes doing M. Gustave and Grand Budapest Hotel. It's that kind of performance.
Yes.
And the fact that it wasn't even, it's hard to win an Oscar, but he wasn't even nominated for either supporting or such a shame. So it's available online. Peacock, if you subscribe to that service, you can watch it through that. Or I'm sure you can rent it almost anywhere. Grand Budapest Hotel, such a good film. And there are just moments in it too. Like him going to Zero Mostel, who's played by who's the actor who plays Zero Mostel?
Right.
Or not Zero Mostel, but Zero, the comedian guy. What was his name?
Yes. Hold on.
Yeah, I can't find his
I've
name.
got it
Okay.
right here on the tip of my tongue, about to tell you who it is.
Who plays Zero?
Tony
Revolori.
Revolori.
Yeah.
There we go. That's what I meant to say.
2 different times in the film, and it's like he'll do something, and Ray Fiennes just kind of, as Gustav kind of stops everything, he's like, very good. Like that.
Yeah.
And he does it once, and you're like, wow, that was such an amazing moment. And then later, he does the same thing, and you're like, wow, it's such a nice bookended comedic moment. And there's several other funny moments in the film, but just really well done. And I think you like this film.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
And I think that was one of the problems with the follow-up to it, French Dispatch, was this was kind of the same idea in a way, story within a story within a story.
Yeah.
French Dispatch had several different stories that were all telling this like magazine thing. And I think after you had kind of like Wes Anderson's Pulp Fiction, it was hard to then step back and just have, Quentin Tarantino made that, and it was like such a monumental movie. And he goes on to make other, and you're like, well, they're okay, but they're not Pulp Fiction. And it's like, this was such a culminating film with Grand Budapest. And then I like French Dispatch quite a bit, but I can admit, am I going to probably return to it as much as I do Grand Budapest? No. Because, Grand Budapest is just
Grand
so
Budapest
good.
is infinitely watchable. Yeah. Where, French Dispatch was just, not as good. Technically now, I will say, just not to be that guy that's correcting you or anything. Isle of Dogs is a film he did in between.
Oh, in between.
Two.
Which was stop motion. Right,
But
okay.
stop motion, it's a little different.
And
This
it was,
is the live action follow-up to
right.
Grand Budapest was the French Dispatch.
Right, which said, you go into Isle of Dogs, you don't expect it to right.
Grand Budapest is amazing and so good. It's the quintessential Wes Anderson film. That's the one between Royal Tenenbaums and Grand Budapest. That's the two. That's where I can think you can set, and you see the evolution of Wes Anderson from.
Oh.
Back in Royal Tenenbaums and definitely in Rushmore. Yes, the sensibility of Wes Anderson's there, but it's all done in a much more grounded, realistic touch and feel environment where you get to Grand Budapest and it's just, he is exploring everything he wants to explore in film in this one piece. And they both work, which is what's great. So, yeah. All right. And look, Ray Fiennes, to me, he could do serious movies like Conclave the entire rest of his career. And because of this role in Grand Budapest and his one scene in Hail Caesar,
Twas so simple.
Twas so simple.
Yeah.
If it's just those two performances, I will always think of him as a comedic actor.
Oh, okay.
Like a dry comedic actor,
right.
Just because of these two roles. Even if he does conclaves for the rest of his career.
Now you maybe want to watch Hail Caesar. Yeah.
Well, maybe just that one scene. Hail Caesar's great, but it's okay. It's not a Coen Brothers classic, but it has its moments. But that scene, I think, is worth watching the movie for just for that.
When, for my money, I think it's Anderson's best film to date, and I think it's Fiennes' best work.
Okay. All right.
Even though I thought he was good in Conclave, and I hope he gets nominated. But
Ray Fiennes is good in a lot.
True. He is.
But I do think, yes, the Grand Budapest was his best performance because it was so unexpected from him, and he just nailed it. He knew exactly what he was doing there.
So, not that actors don't strive to do this anyway, but just so consistent with the character, and everything he does, you're like, well, of course that guy's going to do that because that's who this dude is. Even though you've just met him, you're like, he's just so consistent with his portrayal. It's amazing.
All right, so Chris's recommendation is The Grand Budapest Hotel by Wes Anderson. That was a 2014 film, available on any
10 years. Can you believe that? That's crazy.
Available on all video on demand services for rent or purchase. So, great. Okay, good. I think we had a good show. Conclave, Ray Fiennes, positive reviews. Electric State, still not great looking, but something to watch in March.
Sure.
Because March is not really a key time for a lot of big movie releases. So it'll be good to have what could be a good dumb movie on Netflix in mid-March.
Yeah.
Scary movie, not excited about, not interested in, but Wayne Brothers, work your magic. Give me something to be excited about, and we'll see what happens with that.
Sure.
Kudos to the horror industry for getting back into spoof category. Or spoof level
they're deemed
status.
worthy of spoof
Yes,
again. Yeah.
right. And then Chris's recommendation of Grand Budapest Hotel. Chris, there's a lot we covered today, as always, because we try to chock these things full of everything we can. If anybody has any thoughts, feedback, dialogue, or anything for us about what we just talked about, how can they get a hold of us?
You can send an email to info@footcandle.org. Follow us on Twitter @FootCandleFilm, Facebook, Foot Candle Film Society, Instagram and Threads, we're just simply Foot Candle Film. Al and I are also on Letterboxd, where we try to track what we're seeing and leave quick takes. Do us a favor. If you like the show, consider giving us a star rating or write a review. Share with friends on whatever service you receive your favorite podcasts on, because it'll help us reach new listeners, and we'd appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and we look forward to talking to you next time we get together to do some more movie reviews, news, discussion, and recommendations. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you next time.
See you in the ticket line.
Watch films in the company of like-minded people in the dark. Watch films in the underground. We won't let anyone know where you are. The films that don't make it to Carmike at the mall, or ones that were famous when Grandpa would watch films out of the reverence of the heritage of an art. Watch films through the courtesy of Foot Candle Film Society.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.